So welcome both to Director's Notes.
Thank you.
So we are finally here today to talk about a film that I have enjoyed a lot at festivals as well, which is something I want to get into. But please just introduce yourselves and your film to our audience.
Yeah, well, I'm Victoria. I'm the writer director of the film. And this is Trent, the producer. And we are actually a couple. So we met,
Well,
I think, like 8 years ago.
Yep.
And then we started to work together and try to find a project together. And we made three short films so far. So this, I'm Not a Robot, is the third one. And it's about, well, it started when I was trying to get through some CAPTCHAs and I kept failing for like 4 or 5 times. And then I thought, oh, this might a fun way to find out that I'm actually a robot. And that was a funny thought at first. But then it took a slighter, like darker turn. Pretty quickly, because I was starting to wonder, like, what if, you know, this is also how you, well, what if you start to question whether you are a robot, but also whether you're not real and whether your partner had been lying to you for all this time. So I was really intrigued by that sort of like Truman Show kind of aspect of it, because for some reason I have this fear that someday someone will tell me that, the world is not what I thought it was. Like, that's a very scary thought I have. So I think the film plays a little bit with that feeling
yeah.
a lot.
I have to say, I've always had a problem with captures because I'm a bit of a like da 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 da, there we go. And since your film, I am so careful. I'm like, yep, there. I myself turn into a robot with them because I just there's something in me that's like I can't handle that questionnaire.
No, and it's also like there's also this one with like numbers and letters. Like, I don't know if you have this,
I know it's like, and some are capitals, and they're all at
Yes.
different symbols.
Yes, that's even a trickier one. I never, like, I'm always like refreshing that one because I just can't see it.
And sometimes I think it's to get into the simplest of things as well. So I'm like, I'm not accessing, like court documents or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot. I love as well. So, as you said, you're sort of, it's this small little start to the film, but you open up all these questions. I love speaking to female filmmakers who are questioning sort of female roles. There's the gaslighting side of it, the boyfriend, I wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
Ah, there's so much in the script. And as you initially said, you had so many ideas. How was the process developing it to where you knew you had everything in there?
Yeah, well, I think that, yeah, that's a really good question because when I started this with this, simple, mundane idea, I also saw the ending, which is not like my typical ending, because it's quite dark, and I used to like end on a much lighter notes. But I think it was really like I just saw that image and I was like, okay, that's the challenge, to go from this mundane, like everyday start at the office, towards that ending in like less than 30 minutes.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that? And of course, when you start to think about the subject, there's so much, it's quite because it's turning in this existential drama. There are so many questions, like what is free will, and what is reality, and she thinks she is this woman, like, in this company with all females, and she's doing okay, and she's the breadwinner, and there were so many things going on.
What is humanity?
What is humanity? But what I really like is to sort of like surprise myself when I'm writing. And I also like it when it's like very on point and like every scene is adding up.
Mm.
So I think the thing that was, I think, making it as simple as possible with all those questions, that was the challenge, I guess. Do you remember the writing process?
Yeah, definitely.
Because he's not writing it, but he's like very like we are brainstorming about it when I'm writing.
Oh yeah, you need a soundboard, don't you?
Yes.
Someone to reflect your ideas off of.
Yes.
Of course, it's very frightening to start writing when you have like a blank page. So then suddenly when this blank page gets filled, but when you get stuck, we just talk about it and I ask some questions and then, yeah, she can hopefully move on. But the nice thing was also of course, you always wanted to stay with Lara, the main character, but at the same time
at that location, like one location to
yeah.
Yeah.
And also we were thinking, because we were talking about the world a lot. What is this world where robots do exist and where they are indistinguishable from humans? How does this world work? And how much do we have to explain in this short movie? That was also an important one, because when we talked about the world, there's so much more about this world that is behind this short movie, because we just had to know. And we know, but I think 98% of that we know, it's not in a movie. But I think you feel it, that this is a world and it does exist and it just works. But I know in the first versions of the script, we explained much more about the world.
Okay.
It's been taken out in versions, and even in the editing, a scene is taken out that explains something about the world. So in the end, you feel the world, but it's not really being explained. So that was a really nice process.
Also because that's simply our taste. Like we really dive. I always like it when a film really dives into it like immediately. And along the way you learn something about that world and how it works. But I think it was more like stripping away everything you don't need to.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the most important part, like to take your audience serious, because especially in a short film, you don't want a whole like how do we say it in
explanation?
Exposition as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I watch a lot of short films and I love short films, and I very much appreciate films that treat me with respect, that I as a viewer know what I'm going into and also what you're able to take from that. It's beautiful having discussions with films about people who see something that you didn't, and so I think that's a brilliant part of it. And one thing that I was sort of really struck by is we're talking about a very modern story in terms of robots and AI, but the whole film and the visuals, they have a very vintage feel. So yeah, I want to know all about those decisions.
Yeah. Well, when I was writing the film and talking with crew members about the film, you start to think, okay, what is the world gonna look like? Because of course you can go in the direction of like this clean sci-fi worlds.
Yeah.
But I was always looking also for the main character as a robot, always looking for the human side of it, and I think we human beings have the tendency to long for the past, and like so we drew inspiration for this longing for like vintage and retro design. And I thought that was like a good choice because we shot it on film on 35 millimeters, and that choice was also like because going back to that like human craftsmanship, that just really ties into that human approach of the film. And I think also for her as a character, I sort of like, it's funny because it's the most, I think, personal film for me because I drew inspiration from like how I would react. Like her character is based on how I would react. And even, you know, there's in the film, there's at some point there's this scene where she's walking through this corridor, through the hallway with her boyfriend on the phone. And, you know, she's a bit hypochondriac about the whole thing. And that's, you know, that's sort of mainly our conversation.
Could be a phone call between the two of us.
Yeah, because I'm a hypochondriac as well. So I put in all those little things, you know. So even if she's a robot and I'm not, like it feels very personal. So yeah, I think, yeah, the design was also based on that, and you know, the whole color scheme. And like another example is the cars on the parking deck, because
Yes.
yeah, we found this like beautiful location, like the office space, which looked like sort of like a 60s spaceship. Like it is so beautiful and so powerful, and especially when you have this film on one location, you know, you really want that location to be like a character in itself in a way. So when we saw that location, because
We fell in love.
Yeah, the location manager sent us some photos, and we were like, okay, this is the perfect office space. And then he was like, yeah, but it's super expensive. He was like, this is just a reference, but when you've seen it, you can't unsee it, you know. It's like, and it was like the perfect location. And then he sent some other locations where we're like, yeah, that's also nice, but it's not that location, you know. And then at some point, I think, because what the price he said was like the commercial price of it, I think.
Yeah, it was like $15,000 per day, which of course we couldn't pay. But then
that's not short film money.
Exactly.
No.
And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, but we are a short film. I mean, we're not a big series. We're not from the US. We're not a commercial. Maybe you can ask them. You never know. And then he did ask them, and they were quite supportive of supporting a short. Of course, we had to pay a lot. But it was like 10% of what the original was. And it was still expensive for our short film, but we also knew, okay, we have to make this work because we will never find something like this.
Yeah, so we had the parking location on another location. So I really, you know, we really had to sort of match together. Bowie, we had to match that. So we brought in the vehicles, like this cars from like the 70s and the 80s and the 60s, to match both locations, but also because we found out that, and that's the car she's driving, or he's actually driving it, but her car is this classic car, but it has the engine of a Tesla. So,
okay.
And when I heard about it, was like, oh, but that's you know, the main character in a nutshell, you know, this, you know, old like exterior, but on the inside, you know, and that was
modern beast.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, no, so I loved all those little cars, and I think they're sort of the cars as well that for Americans, they're like, oh yeah, those are European cars. They think we all drive these tiny little things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to you about sort of one particular scene. So up on the roof, he's in the car and he's, you know, like, come on, what's wrong with you? It's fine. And sort of driving along, I knew there was something coming. You're building that tension. How was that scene all planned out? Because for me, it was so integral to everything.
In the writing or the shooting, or both?
In the shooting of it.
Okay.
In the shooting, yeah. I think we shot that scene in the last 2 days, right? Like all the exterior scenes. And yeah, like it was like quite a challenge because you know, especially the ending, the stunt scene. It was my first time doing a stunt scene. So I was really worried about it. So beforehand, I was like, okay, we have to prep this, and you know, and everyone is telling you, okay, it's going to be all right, you know, especially with like, can we spoil everything?
We can put spoiler alert at the top of the
Yeah.
interview.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
We're
great.
at this point in conversations. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're gonna have a link to the
Oh,
New
that's
Yorker
perfect.
YouTube. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So the film link goes at the top of the interview. So hopefully people will watch it and then read the interviews.
yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because when now that I'm thinking about it, I think in the writing already it was quite a challenge to write that last scene because it's, you know, it's such a build up, and of course you don't want to disappoint your audience. And it's a lot of talking, so I think that's the part of the script that I worked the most on, I believe, to build it up like properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also to like make it, you know, completely believable that she's actually jumping, you know, because it's such a short amount of time, and she really has to go through a lot of like steps internally to actually do that.
Yeah.
And when we were doing the stunts, I remember we had it prepped a couple of times because we had to postpone the shoot a couple of times because of COVID. So we had prepped everything like twice or 3 times maybe. And then on the day of shooting, the stunt coordinator said to us, okay, but we can't do like, because what I had envisioned was like, we're shooting it in one shot from the moment that she decides to jump. Because I really wanted to be with her and really go for that impact, you know. And then the stunt coordinator said, okay, but we can't do like the last part of the running, because the stunt woman is attached to cables, so she has to run a little bit and then has the speed to like jump off the building.
And the cables were not long enough.
And the cables were long. So I was like, oh, and it was also the timing, you know, wasn't the best because it was right before lunch. And I was, you know, that's not the best timing to break bad news. So I really wanted to punch the guy in the face. So I actually walked away. And then I was like, okay, I was waiting at the elevator. And I was like, okay, but it's very childish to walk away from your own set. So I walked back. And then, you know, we could have a discussion about it. And then during lunch, we had to like figure out another way to shoot it. And I'm really glad that our DP, Martijn van Broekhuizen, came with this idea. And so now when she's walking away and her boyfriend is yelling, then we pan with the camera. And in that pan back, we do the swap with the stunt women. And then she goes like on the railing, and when she's looking back, we have a face replacement with the actress. And then she jumps and she just stops right before the ground, and then you shoot a plate of her like doing that last bit, and then you have to stitch it all together in the post. And that was also very nerve-wracking because I was like, okay, but if it doesn't work, we don't have a film. Like there's no other ending to this film. And everyone keeps saying, yeah, but it's going to be all right. And then, you know, you see the visual effects at like 80%, and you're like, yeah, but I don't believe
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. So it was, I think, until like the very ending, it was
after we had finished the editing. After we locked the film, I mean, the visual effects was still at like 95%, and it still didn't work. So we were like, oh, we really have to push it to make it to 100%. And that really took some fine tuning, because both of us don't have a lot of experience in visual effects, and it's very difficult to trust others in that case, because if they say, oh yeah, but it's going to be fine, you're like, yeah, you can say it's going to be fine, but we have to make sure it's going to be fine, and we have to see it.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think that's also, you know, like, you know, as a director and a producer, you're responsible for that. But at the same time, you know, not in your case, but in my case, as a writer director, like most of the time I'm just writing, you know, as a writer director, that's the most time consuming thing. So I'm not on set as much as I would like. So it's also a lesson in like trusting your crew around you, because they have that experience, you know. So I think that was for me a very eye-opening experience. Like, of course you have to be on top of it, but you also have to trust your crew and trust the process. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, all of those moving parts, whatever you did, it works. One of my favorite sort of screenings of the film, because I sort of watched it just before the interview and I knew it was happening, but I was at a festival and the film was put in a comedy program. Um, but it was quite a dark, weird comedy program. And it came on and I was like, I know what happens. And I was just sat there on my own and just hearing this like collective gasp from the audience,
Yeah.
you know, was incredible. And I'm sure you've experienced that in screenings.
Yeah, yeah. And also, and it's funny because, you know, because I was nervous if it was gonna work, I always pay attention on, you know, the audience when that moment, you know, when I know that moment is about to hit. And sometimes people start laughing a little bit. And in at the beginning I was like, oh my God, they are laughing because it's, you know, it's not, it's clumsy, it's not working. But then I realized, and we talked about it with people, like it's also laughing out of discomfort, like, you know,
It's nervous laughter.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, because it's a short film and you're building a world where, you know, 10 minutes earlier, she sat there doing her dream job, playing with this beautiful music. And then you escalate, you know, to that moment. And I think as a human being, you're thinking, what experience would you have to go through to actually happen? Your sound design is very important. I always listen to films loud in my headphones, and I really love the way you play with that tension, you build it up. I thought that was such an important part of the film.
Yeah, it is, because I think, you know, beforehand we spoke a lot about the sound design and the music and stuff like that, because in my previous two shorts, you know, both sound design and score didn't really play a huge part, because my previous two shorts have way more dialogue, even more dialogue than this film. Like, they are very dialogue driven. So when I was starting to write the script, I asked the composer that I worked with before, like, okay, how can we implement more music into it? Because in the past I had, you know, reached out to him, you know, just before shooting or even after shooting, and then he had to adjust on, like, okay, you know, I think, you know, the dialogue was already sort of like the music of the film, and then there's not much room for him to, you know, to add something to that. So in this process, he started to write the music while I was writing the script, and we could go back and forth and like influence and like inspire each other. So some parts of the music that he wrote, you know, beforehand are also in this film right now, and I think that really, you know, make it feel like a whole in a way. And for the sound design, you know, we were looking for like a very intimate, like human sort of sound design. And I think it's funny because, you know, when you watch your film in a different room, like it's always different. And I think, you know, the sound design is maybe a little too subtle in some environments.
Especially if you are playing with other shorts that have their sound level here and we are subtle, then like, okay, maybe we should tune it up. Yeah. But also it was nice because when discussing with the composer, we talked about the human element and the robot element. And while you were asking the question, I was thinking that this is something that Victoria thinks might be pretentious, but it's like the sound design is almost sort of her heartbeat. You know, the sound design is real. It's a very human element, the sound design. Everything in the sound design, it's there, you know, we really worked with her feelings, her touching something, her breaths.
Yes.
I think the sound design, of course, we didn't say it before. It's like the heartbeat of the film or her heartbeat, but the sound design, it's very, it's almost her heartbeat, because everything that you hear or don't hear, it's in her head.
That's it. And it's her panic as well, you know, having to understand this thing that's going on with her.
Yeah.
And I think that brings you with it. And
Yeah.
you know, I was talking to another filmmaker the other day, and sound is so paradoxical because sometimes silence can be so important.
Yeah, also there was one element on the roof when he was, sorry that I interrupted you.
No, no, not at all. No, I like it.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about, because you said the silence, because we have this one moment on the roof where he says, I don't want to mourn. And then he says again. And that moment, of course, he's putting on a jacket. We only see her face for like 30, 40 seconds. And that moment was something, there was some music there. Or not the music, like a tone, like there's a tone in her head. And there's also a tone like that in the boardroom when she finally understands, shit, I'm a robot.
Yeah.
I did like it, but at the same time, Victoria and the sound designer were like, it might be a bit too much. And then suddenly there was something about the wind. And we thought, okay, let's keep the wind, make the wind a little bit bigger. And her hair was also blowing. So it did work. And it's a kind of a moment of silence with wind. It does work so nice. It's really, really lovely moment. I think it's a lovely moment.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Sound, it can be a very conflicting thing. But for me, like either the sound or the silence or whatever, which is why, you know, I've said before, I think I have permanent tinnitus because my headphones are on and it's just loud. I need to be in that world.
Yeah.
Because that's what you get in a cinema as well. But obviously when you're watching these films, it's different. But yeah, I also, so I wanted to ask you the post-production. You know, how was that approached? Because you've got the different feelings, the different emotions, you've got actors that are having to go through a lot in different bits, and then of course you've got the VFX and all of that you had to add in.
Yeah, well, how I usually work with Trent is that he made the first cut of the edit with the editor. Because I am always terrified of like editing, especially the first part. Well, I think 80% of the editing I find horrible because I'm such a perfectionist and I always like it when I can fine tune. But that's mostly, you know, when you're about to finish either writing a script or the editing process. So you did the first part.
Yeah,
like the first edit.
Yeah, what's so nice about our collaboration is that she trusts me to do that because I know what's going on in her head. And when I try to do the first editing, I try to cut away a lot of the bullshit, because when you make a film, 90% that you're shooting is never being used. So if you are in editing, most of the material is not good enough. So I tried to make a cut, which of course is 100% based on the script. And then I try to find the shots that are good. And of course, that's not that, it's not that difficult because there are a lot of good takes. But I try to find something in her taste already.
Yeah, also because we didn't shoot a lot because we were shooting on film. So I think that's already like really, you know, it's easier in the edits when you don't have much material and you like we repetition. We rehearsed a lot. So then when you start shooting, you know, it's not the shit that you call it, like
no. It's not shit.
Good takes, but you still have to choose those takes and like go through every take, and that's something you do up front, and then when I come into the edit I can
hopefully there will be a first edit where she can see, oh, this could be something. And if you go to like the zero edit, or then it's like, oh my god, this is nothing. But at the same time I know that the first edit for Victoria, it's so difficult because she starts to like editing after like version 15 or 16. I remember during editing, one time she was saying to me, I think we edited 20 days, and maybe day 15 or 16 or 14, I don't know. She was saying, oh my God, I think I made the worst film ever. If, if it's going to be like this, do we have to showcase it? I said, no, we can put it on a shelf and we don't have to do anything with it. It doesn't matter. We're not obliged to do anything. She said, okay, that kind of reassures me. But that was like, we only had like 6 more days to edit probably. But that's how our mind works, you know? It's like, yeah, if it's not there, it's you think it's the worst you made.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I think every director can relate to that, but I think especially, you know, because the first part is more comedy, I think especially with comedy, it's so crucial to find the right timing, because you know, like a frame more or a frame less is so like
can ruin the joke.
So I think it's that fine-tuning is also in like finding the right flow and the right timing, and then, you know, I usually like to go like through it like scene by scene, and like, you know, fine-tune a scene and then go to another, but at the end you have to bring it all together and find the flow of the whole film. So that was quite a challenge, but I was really glad that you and the editor were like very optimistic about it. And that was another like eye-opening thing, and I think it connects to what I said earlier. Like, I really have to trust you and the editor, who are more experienced, you know, and every director goes through this like, oh fuck, I made the worst film ever. And then at some point, most of the time, at some point,
it will be fine.
It will be fine, and it works. Yeah. But if I knew that I was going to be nominated for an Oscar, I'd be that depressed, I think. Yeah. Yeah. If only I knew. Yeah.
So, I mean, talking about the Oscar, obviously, huge congratulations.
Thanks.
And then sort of going back to where I said I saw a film in a comedy program, you know, with all the festivals you've been in, where have you found the film? Because it could fit in so many different places, which I think is brilliant and very unique as well. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about your festival experiences and about the programming of the film.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think what really helped was that I made 2 shorts before. So, you know, with those films which have like a similar tone of voice, you could already like pinpoint some festivals.
There were already some festivals that kind of displayed Victoria's work once or twice before. So my first thing was to get the film out to these festivals, at least the bigger festivals, which was either Academy Award qualifying or European Film Award qualifying.
Yeah.
And also, of course, there is this fantastic element in Victoria's films, especially in this one. So I did submit
as in the genre,
as in the genre, the genre, and it also matters of the timing, of course, because we were shooting in May, we were finished in August, September. So of course then you cannot submit to the festivals that are in August and September. You never make.
You're sort of moving into the next year.
But then we were looking like, okay, October, November, and then we were like, yeah, Sitges would be wonderful. So I submitted the film in, I don't think it was even final with all the credits, in a version in August, I think, which was like the latest date we could submit it. And then I think a couple of weeks later they said, oh yeah, we love to have it in Sitges. And then it's like, okay, then you know what you're going to do, because then you're going to Sitges and that will be your first international showing of the film.
Yeah.
And Sitges is such a nice festival. Like, have you been in Sitges?
I've been to the town years ago, but never the festival.
Oh, the festival is amazing because it's a genre film festival.
Okay.
You know, the audience is so engaged, like they are so into genre films. So they are very like loud and like, but in like a very like, they were applauding during the film, and when they like something, they start to applaud, and it was with all the screenings, but it was the best first screening you could get because everyone was so involved. So I think that was a really good start to have the film there.
Yeah, because we were playing there at a Saturday morning around 11 a.m. And we arrived Friday, the day before, and we were like, oh yeah, we'll see in Sitges. Maybe it's a small theater of like 100, 150 people.
Yeah.
And then they said, oh no, you're going to be in the grand screen in a big cinema with 1,200 seats. And we're like, 1,200 seats for 5 short films? Well, probably it's going to be quite empty. And then we entered the cinema and it was like 800, 900 people sitting there, 11 a.m. in the morning.
Amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah, and then after the screening, because she had to present the film, then after the screening, we were walking from at the boulevard of Sitges.
And it was at the day, like they have this one Saturday, I guess, at the Sitges Film Festival where they like have this zombie boulevard and everyone can get like special makeup of like, so there were people walking around with fake blood and like going all zombie.
And they wanted to have a selfie with Victoria because she was the director of that film they saw, and then it's so great.
Crazy,
it's really crazy to be there. Everybody loves fantastic films there, or at least that's what it looks like.
Nice. Okay, I'm gonna add it to my list.
Oh, you should. It's really
so then you're talking about people in the cinema sort of reacting and applauding. So what did everyone do in that moment where she just hits the ground?
Well, they were cheering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about that festival, if there's some good stuff, like that could also be like a splattering head, you know, but it could also be someone jumping on the ground, which they really believe, and they were like, woo! You know, I think maybe 50 people were kind of cheering.
Yeah.
It was
really
so
weird.
Nice. Yeah. It was weird and nice. Yeah.
But for me, that entirely makes sense. The first time I watched the film, and thinking about everything, and it's the feminist side of things, and it's the control, and it's the man and power, and all of these things that I hate. And then at the end, her, even though she clearly had a happy life, just going no, and ending it. I felt elated, and then that moment she opens her eyes. I just felt everything drain out of me.
I know.
It's even still now thinking about it, and then you're just like, you've just got to go and do it another day.
No, and I think it's funny that you mentioned this, because for me it was never like, it's not like she has any sort of death wish. It's more like this FU to like her boyfriend, and
it's an immediate reaction.
Like, no, I'm in control, so I'm glad you're picked up on that.
So I mean, with the Oscar nomination, what has this given you as a filmmaker, and sort of how is this, do you think it's going to change your approach moving forward? Are you gonna shock audiences more?
Oh, that's a good question.
First approach with making films is to shock people, right?
No.
You want to entertain people, and at the same time you want to provoke them thoughts. So not shocking. There are films being made for shocking people.
Maybe surprising people.
For sure.
Is maybe
for sure
a good description?
Yeah.
I think surprising people is the best description. I often get asked, when programming, what are you looking for? And sort of my main answer in something, it's like, it's something I haven't seen before.
Exactly.
And
something that takes you on a road that you're like, oh, I think it's going this way, and then it's going the other way. It's wonderful.
It's incredible, and that's part of cinema and the experience and everything. And you're with a great range of live action films this year.
Yes, it's a really strong program. And we are so honored also, because you know, of course, these are all good films, but also very different films.
So different.
We really feel like an outsider in a way, because, you know, usually, well, I was told that usually the Academy voters like, you know, this like political, like very societal, like commentary films. And, you know, so I feel like we are sort of like the underdog.
Yeah, and also
but being nominated is the win, you know,
Yeah.
like we are nominated for life now. Like that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
That's so weird and so
Yeah.
cool. So that's already winning. Yeah.
But you were saying something about comedy and genre earlier, and what I really like is that on the list of 5 nominated, we are the only genre film and we are the only comedy.
Yeah.
And like black comedy sci-fi. And I do really like that. Like, okay, this is the time that a genre film makes it to that. And also a black comedy, which sometimes are there, but they're always the outsiders. But I really like that we are the only one.
Yeah. But I think, and you know, I'm sure I don't reflect the Oscar voters, but I think there very much is a political and societal commentary to your film. And I think that's coming through. So I think you should lean into that, because that is very much there.
Yeah, and I know it's there, you know, because but at the same time, I never wanted to be too much on the nose. So it's a bit subtle, maybe, but yeah, they're
Again, that's what audiences are like.
Yeah.
You know, audiences, you've got to treat them with respect. And, you know, people who go and fill a theater to watch 5 short films, they want to see something that makes them think and is a bit different.
Yeah.
All right, both of you, sorry for the technical problems, but thank you so much.
Thank you. We really enjoyed that conversation.
Yeah, it was really nice.